Welcome back to House Masters, presented by Home Projects. I'm still Steve, and John is still here, and we are still talking about the top 15 home improvement myths. And we're getting ready to talk about number 10 through number 6. We're ratcheting up the excitement as we work towards number 1. As always, we ask you to subscribe to our channel, like our videos, share with your friends. If you like what you're seeing, please share us on social media. More importantly, if you have any questions or comments or any ideas for future myths, please put them in the comments or visit our website and send us an email. It's supposed to be an organic discussion, and we hope that you participate. So, John, number 10. Is this where I get to talk?
We know that you're going to. But before you do, does this series of episodes somehow make you feel like Casey Kasem?
Yeah, like I'm counting down the top 15 songs in America or something like that.
Yeah, like every Saturday morning.
Yeah, you listen and you record it, so you have your favorite songs on a recorded tape.
It almost makes me want to do what was it? You had those people call in or email and they wanted to dedicate a song. I almost want to dedicate one of these particular myths to you. And it's a perfect time for it.
I was going to say,
I'll dedicate this one to you.
I think number 10 is probably a perfect one to dedicate to me. Why don't you go ahead and read it so there's no bias here, and then I'll just take over from there.
All right. Well, I can do that for you. If I could even find it. Architects and interior designers are a complete waste of money.
I'm a little embarrassed
so now is the time that you must justify and redeem yourself.
I'm disappointed we even have this on the list. I guess I'm happy that we're in the top third of the least surprising.
Well, technically speaking, you're actually in the bottom half.
Because,
you'd have to be actually towards the bottom of this list.
Okay.
6.
So architects and interiors designers are a waste of money. So, obviously, I'm an architect. I'm a licensed architect, state of North Carolina. Have been for going on 15 years. And when I was in practice, I specialized in high-end residential, historic adaptive reuse, and some commercial work. And I competed with, in my market, in North Carolina, you're not required to be a licensed architect to do residential design. So in our market here in North Carolina, I competed with unlicensed draftsmen and designers who had every right to be in the market. I can't say that they weren't good at what they did. A lot of them were very talented, but they're just, they had a lower standard of ethical responsibility. They did not carry insurance, errors and emissions insurance. They certainly didn't have the overhead I do when it comes to maintaining my license, continuing education, the professional organizations that I belong to, like the American Institute of Architects and NCARB, which are all organizations that manage my license. And I say me, I'm talking me a lot here. That also goes for licensed interior designers, engineers, physical engineers, PEs, civil engineers, landscape architects, anybody who has a degree and extensive amount of expertise in an industry brings a lot of value to the project. Now, our fees are always going to be a little bit higher compared to unlicensed designers, and for all the reasons I just rattled off. But let's also take a step back here, just from the pure cost of the architect or the interior designer. Let's talk more about the design process in general. I'll sit here and I'll admit that there are a lot of residential designers or non-licensed designers out there who do a good job. And really the point here is that as a homeowner or contractors, if you're in design build, hiring a professional designer is never a waste of money. We were talking earlier about moving the wall over 18 inches and how that costs money. Well, in my practice, I used a lot of 3D modeling, that allows you to see the space in as close to real time as possible. And the software I've been using has evolved over time. We can put VR glasses on now and stand in a room. Those types of tools are very valuable. They are expensive, but they bring a great value to the project for allowing you to see those spaces and being able to put furniture in the room, see how the sunlight comes through a window, and model those types of things. And the other thing that's not, I don't know, John, is I think we do get around to talking about building or permits here eventually, but usually if you have a licensed architect and interior designer, you're going to have high quality drawings that can be part of the deliverable into your project. In one of our previous episodes where we talk about contracts, we talk about the quality of deliverables and what the quality of deliverables does for the quality of the bid or the contract that your contractor comes to you with. And so if you are doing a significant project, if you're doing anything that involves moving walls, changing mechanical systems, changing lighting, that deserves professional design. And it doesn't deserve a contractor sketching stuff out on a napkin and saying, what do you think of this? It deserves you as the homeowner sitting down with somebody and going through the design process, making mistakes on paper. I always tell people that, that erasing a line in the computer is free. Erasing a line in the field costs you money. That's where that wall gets moved over 18 inches. So if you can make those mistakes in a computer, you're going to be far better off for it. And of course, the insinuation here is that we're talking about smaller projects, but the bigger the project gets, when you start getting into additions and significant renovations and new home construction or additions, tying into existing structures, tying into existing systems, making sure that site work is correct. You don't introduce stormwater issues or grading problems outside. Your roof lines don't conflict with each other. John, you and I have worked on a couple projects where the roof lines were just like, missing in missing in the middle of the night, and it took a hat trick to figure them out. You just need somebody who knows what they're looking at and can envision the space. So it is a myth. Architects, interior designers, any professional designer is not a waste of money. They bring a lot of value to the table, and that's really what having professionals in the project are all about.
And real quick, going back to the scenario that we talked about in the last episode in regards to moving the wall to 18 inches and the cost that included, you take on a remodel, say, and I'm not just going to pinpoint a certain size remodel, but say your fee for being an architect on a project is $10,000, and a professional designer's price for being on that project is $5,000. Well, that $5,000 and then some is saved just by virtue of going with the architect versus the designer when it comes to a minor change like changing a wall in a remodel. So take that into account. You're going to end up paying it now, or you're going to pay it later.
Yeah.
Better off that you pay it up front and get all of those things out in the open proactively, so you don't have those issues on the job site during the process. But do you have anything else to add?
Well, yeah, you actually brought something out that I do want to talk about.
I thought we were clear.
In one of our previous episodes, we talked about contracts again. We're referencing that episode a lot here. And we talked about the design build process. And I think if and when you're looking for an architect or interior designer, consider hiring somebody who has some construction expertise. I'm a contractor as well, licensed contractor. There's not a lot of Steve Johnsons in the world that do architecture and construction, but you don't have to be a general contractor to understand how things go together. Experience is valid. So hire somebody who knows the difference between a 2x4 and a 2x6, and the difference between a nominal and an actual measurement, and understands what makeup air is and indoor air quality, and isn't just putting lines on paper and making things look pretty. So that's just a little plug for the professional designers all out there. So we were talking a lot about value of architects. So that kind of leads us into number 9 on our list. And that is, my home improvement project just added value to my home.
And when I just thought that we were never going to get here, here we are. We're going to talk about it. Everybody, I was sitting there watching a commercial today for a well-known window manufacturer who is just pounding the air right now because it's window season.
Yep.
First thing they say in their commercial is about how their windows add value to the house. It adds value, or it actually lessens the value of your bank account. That's what it does, first of all. Second of all, Remodeling Magazine, I think it is, every year has what they call a cost of value report. And what that means is the cost of a project versus the value that you gain from having that particular project done in your home. And there's not a project on the list that is a one-for-one proposition. In fact, your most return is roughly about 82, 83%. And that changes from project, comparing on trends on a yearly basis. Windows, I mean, it's down in the 55% range.
Yep.
So every dollar that you spend on a window project, you're getting back roughly 55%. Okay. You have projects out there that will actually devalue your home.
Yeah, a pool.
A pool is a prime example. I mean, especially in above ground. But if you put an in-ground pool in certain jurisdictions, the appraisers in that jurisdiction might look at that pool as being a liability. Homeowners, when you put the house up for sale, a lot of times will look at a pool as not only a liability from a standpoint of safety, but also a liability from the standpoint of cost in terms of maintaining that pool. It's expensive to maintain a pool. So you don't live by this mantra that everything that you're going to do to the house, automatically your house value just went up $5,000 because you did it. That's not the case at all. In fact, we'll talk, just speaking windows again real quick, because they're really easy to talk about. In most cases, for one, the real estate agent, when they're selling a house, you're not going to realize the value of your home until you actually sell the house. Okay. You're going to pay on it through your taxes, every year, or however your jurisdiction is set up when it comes to property taxes. But you're not going to realize the true value on your house or the
depreciation,
the appreciation of that house until you sell it, or the depreciation in some particular markets.
Yep.
There's some appraisers that don't account for vinyl windows versus wood windows. There's not a true model out there that's a set I mean, there's standards out there, but there's a lot of wiggle room around those standards. And the real estate agent damn sure ain't going to talk about vinyl windows versus the wood, or vinyl clad versus a vinyl window. They don't talk about those types of things.
They just say it has new windows is all you get out of it.
Yes, and new windows doesn't add any particular set value to a house on the appraisal sheet. So, just keep all these things in mind when you're doing this. Don't do it from a value standpoint. Do it from a need standpoint within the house and the utility of how your house works. Or, if you got some money laying around and you want the extra convenience and you want that, that garden tub, go ahead and put it in. But don't think that you're going to get an extra $2,000 of value because you put a garden tub in your master bathroom.
You need to do it for you. I tell clients all the time, design the house for you. When I hear them start talking about what's the best design decision for resale, what does the next owner think about it? I'm like, no, that's the wrong reason to be thinking about this. If you're designing for the future for someone you don't even know yet, you're basically designing a spec home. So design for you, design what you like. Be aware of fads. 99% of interior design decisions made in kitchen flips and bathroom flips are based on current fads and current trends. The average homeowner who owns their house for 30 years will renovate it twice. And they're usually focusing on kitchens and bathrooms. And it's usually based around significant changes in their lifestyle, kids growing up, leaving for college, or having new children brought into the home, and so it's more driven by function, not aesthetic. I will also take this time to say that there is one thing you can do to a house that will actually add value to it, and that's actually adding on to the house. If you're physically adding square footage to the home, tangible square footage, that square footage has a value. In some markets it might be $150 a square foot or $200 a square foot. And so when you go to appraise your house for the next tax season, the tax collectors will say, okay, you added 100 square feet to your house, it's worth $200 a square foot. So now we're going to add the value of your home, and you get to pay taxes on it. But that also will account for when you go to resell the house, your house is being larger. And just before we move on to the next one, I will say that be careful about buying home renovations and additions by the square foot. If you're pricing a renovation or an addition by the square foot, you are not adding value to your house. The only projects that should really be priced by square foot is a new home construction, and even then, that's sketchy. That's probably a whole episode unto itself. Anything you'd like to say before we move on to your favorite one here, number 8?
No.
Okay.
No. This is one. This is a fun one.
Oh yeah. So number 8. HOAs and ARCs are always the spawn of the devil. Always the spawn of the devil.
Well, speaking from the perspective of 2 former presidents of the same HOA.
Yes, we believe that or not, people. John and I have been the president of the same HOA.
For the same neighborhood.
For the same neighborhood. Not obviously at the same time, but yes. We've had the pleasure of working with the same developer.
Yeah. HOAs and ARCs, they have terrible names or terrible reputations. And for some reason, I mean, in some actual occasions, rightfully so. I've lived in neighborhoods before where, the president of the HOA is, the spawn of Benito Mussolini. They're totalitarian. They're power hungry. They're, everything that they should not be. But there are HOAs and ARCs out there. And what an ARC is, if we didn't list it, is an architectural review committee.
Yeah, it's usually a part of the HOA.
Yes. There are HOAs out there that do it the right way, that are working in the true spirit of what an HOA is supposed to be, which is keep the value of the neighborhood up to par.
Correct. Protect your investment.
Protect the investment of the actual members of that HOA. Obviously, you have issues with developers, and you have issues with, certain homeowners, and, this homeowner likes to keep 6 cars on ramps in the middle of his grass, and, they're just a royal pain in the rear end to work with. What was that?
Pink flamingos. Yeah,
pink flamingos. You got a number of different scenarios out there that an HOA will run into. I was on Nextdoor last night, and somebody had posted, I don't know if you saw this, Steve, somebody in their neighborhood, the HOA president was driving down the street in a white sedan slowly. Okay? Well, the lady didn't know it was the HOA president at the time, but being that crime is at an all-time high right now, she instantly looked at it as, why is that car driving 2 miles per hour on idle down the street, checking out all the houses? Well, what it turned out was she chased down the car, and it happened to be the HOA president, and he was checking on um, violations in the neighborhood. That's not the spirit of what I
No.
ran my HOA.
You don't go hunting for them.
No. That's the type of HOA that you want to get away from. And that's the type of HOA that it gives the good ones a bad name.
Correct.
If your HOA is meeting monthly or quarterly and inviting, the members to come and discuss certain issues, whether it be neighborhood watch issues from a safety standpoint, whether it be, questions in regards to projects that they have coming up, whether it might be, or do we want to add certain social aspects to the clubhouse, so we can start breeding some camaraderie in the neighborhood. Those are the things that a HOA are meant to do. And there are a lot of them out there that actually do those things, and they do them very well. The problem with a lot of them is that the people that are on the HOA boards have never once had an ounce of power or authority in their life. And now they've got it. It's an unpaid position. They were elected there, so in some sense, it's a politician type position or a popularity
contest. Yeah. Or in some cases, whoever the only person who volunteers gets the job.
Exactly. So, there's a number of different dynamics, and you have to, if you're moving into a neighborhood, you would be extremely wise to drive down the street on idle one day on a Saturday and just pull off on the side of the road and talk to a number of neighbors to see what their HOA is like if they're actually in one.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you. I mean, I'm telling you, a homeowner that doesn't like their HOA,
they'll let you know.
Will shout at the top of their lungs about how they hate them.
Yeah.
In terms of arcs, real quick, that arc is the only thing that saves you from somebody having a yellow door on a tan house. So, and the value of the arc only comes from how strict the covenants are in terms of what they allow on a house or in a yard. Not necessarily how strict, but how detailed they are. So in other words, fences. I was called by somebody on the president board in our neighborhood when I was in the airport a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "Hey, what do you think about split rails?" I said, "Well, I think they're nice. I mean, I've had a split rail in my yard before." Well, I'm somebody's wanting one in the back of the neighborhood. Should we allow it? And it's like, for one, I'm not on the board anymore. That's a decision you need to make. And I said, furthermore, it's not in the covenants.
Right.
There's nothing in the covenants about a split rail fence.
Good or bad.
Good or bad.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the value of the arc is actually having something in the covenants about a split rail fence.
Teeth.
Yay or nay, whether you're going to allow it or not. And and it could be good or bad. I don't know. That comes down to opinion. But that's also the value of actually getting on the board or getting on the arc yourself and having some actual control over those actual decisions. You can't sit back, not participate in any of this stuff, never go to the meetings or anything, and sit back in the back bitching and complaining all the time. So, and there's a lot of that
There's a lot of that going on, yeah.
But all in all, HOAs can be a good thing if they're in the right spirit.
Yeah.
But they can also be your biggest nightmare.
In the neighborhood I live in now, John and I no longer live in the same neighborhood, so we can't be on the same board now anymore.
Yeah,
but
I drove him away.
In my neighborhood, we have a couple stormwater devices, ponds for the layman, and we have privately owned roads and street lighting, as well as sidewalks. And so all of those entities are managed by our HOA. A good chunk of our annual dues go towards the maintenance of those devices. And we also have a professional management company that our board has hired to manage those things. So, although we have a lot of really smart people in our neighborhood, a lot of engineers and business people in my neighborhood, so there's a lot of talent on our board, and that talent suggested, hey, we should have a professional management company, and we do, and they're responsible for the day-to-day operations of managing those entities. But more importantly, they're also responsible for managing issues between homeowners. If someone does violate the ARC or a covenant in the neighborhood, barking dogs or cars that shouldn't be where they are, or crime or something, sometimes that can be a tricky situation, an adversarial situation between two homeowners, and a board member can call into management and say, hey, we need you to navigate this for us, and that brings a lot of value. So anything you want to add before we move on to number 7, which is also another big one that I'm going to take offense to?
No, there's partial offense that I take to it.
Okay. So without further ado, so number 7 on our list is a contractor will always screw you.
Now, the reason why I said I partially take offense is the fact that I voluntarily stepped away from actually being a contractor. So,
as did I.
I got it out of my blood. But you're still in the fray, Steve.
I am. So
there are a lot of very good professional contractors out there that are in business for the right reasons. They employ good people that work for them. I had some of the best employees. I had, for a construction business like I ran, I had no turnover. When I hired somebody, I was extremely picky with who I hired. I interviewed probably to a fault to get the right person, and I paid well. And I mean, at one time, I didn't have anybody on my entire construction crew in the field that were with me less than 3 years. That's unheard of.
That's incredible, yeah. Especially in this
the
market.
Trades. I mean, we talked in a previous episode about a lot of in this business, man. I mean, a lot of these guys, especially the low end of the totem pole laborers, you pay them on Friday and they don't show up on Monday.
Yep.
So if you're doing things the right way and for the right reasons, your employees will pay you back with loyalty, and that's going to only provide an ultimate top-notch service to the homeowner that you're trying to serve. There's a lot of contractors out there that meet they check every box in terms of what it means to be professional, what it means to follow up, what it means to communicate, what it means to build a sound, professional, and moral business. But you have a large element in this industry also that, because, and I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to get myself in trouble. I'm constantly in trouble for my mouth, but they're not educated. You're dealing with some of the, and when I say this, I'm speaking in terms of percentages now. Okay, a large percentage of the construction industry, you're dealing with the lowest of the doldrums when it comes to a value of a person. You're dealing with your alcoholics, your drug addicts, your wife beaters, your husband beaters, everything that you don't want to be, you're dealing with on a job site. And I'm telling you, man, I mean, there were some people that I had as subcontractors, man. It's like, I don't know if I want that guy in the house. Now, granted, he was a subcontractor. I didn't have but so much control over that. But just by virtue of the way he looked, didn't provide the professionality that I was actually seeking, or what I was trying to offer my homeowner. But yeah, you've got some real jacklegs out there that They don't have the skill set. They don't have the education. They have a very difficult time getting along with society in terms of how to navigate a level of communication with a homeowner. You got to be careful, but as with anything, it's anytime a sentence says will always or will never, it's usually false.
Correct.
Okay, because there's always going to be elements on both sides of the fence. I would venture to say that there's a good 30 to 35% of contractors out there that are wholesome, good, moral people, and they're in it for the right reasons. And I would venture to say, Steve, that you agree with me.
I would. There's a joke on the street that 99% of contractors make the other 1% look bad. And where I'm going to go with my comment here is, don't hire a contractor only on price. If you're worried about being taken advantage of, make sure you're hiring someone you trust and have a relationship with. And of course, you can still make a mistake and hire the wrong person, even though you like them or trust them. But if you have a relationship with them, then that will go a long way. And we have a running joke in our house that always bring someone into the house and see how the dogs react around them. If the dogs don't like them, then kick them out. There's a lot of truth to that. A lot of truth to that. If you get the willies around somebody, if they apparently don't have similar lifestyles and ethics and a perception of how they present themselves as you do, then you're probably not going to get along with them very well. I wouldn't say don't hire somebody if you're a Ford guy. Not hire them because they're driving a Dodge, but if they show up and they, as you mentioned before, there's alcohol or other issues with them, you'll know that real quick. And the fact that they even showed up to your house in that condition is a clue right there. Now, obviously, as the bigger the projects get, the more sophisticated and professional the contractors are that are responding to your request for work. You're going to work your way out of that. But there's a lot of unlicensed trades out there that have all the characteristics that John just described. So, again, we've done a couple episodes already about contracts that talk a lot about how to weed these out. And we've also talked about the ethics of how to hire people. So a contractor won't always screw you, but it is possible to get screwed by a contractor. How about that?
There are professional contractors that they're not going to intentionally screw you, but you at the end of the project might deem that you got screwed by them.
That's correct. Yep.
Just by virtue of a misunderstanding.
Yep. Absolutely.
And
that probably happens more often than not.
Why we're doing what we're doing as in this podcast that we do, with home projects, is the fact that we're trying to create understanding of each other from both sides of the table. And there's been a major disconnect over the past decades in this industry. I mean, major disconnect, and we realize it. I mean, heck, we lived it. You don't live it so much, Steve, because you're more on the commercial side now. But in the residential side, man, yeah. I mean, it's a match of egos.
Of course.
And this homeowner's brace. I mean, they hate you before you even knock on the door, if you're a contractor, just by virtue of this particular myth right here that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Because they've been conditioned to think that, man, this guy, when he comes in this house, he's going to screw me to high heaven.
Yep.
That's just not the case. You just need to do your due diligence, do your homework, research, watch these podcasts that we're talking about, that we're going to navigate you through the process, and you're going to be perfectly fine. But that does not mean that there's not going to be something that goes awry in the middle of the process. It happens. It's called construction.
Yep.
And that's another major thing that we say in the industry. It's construction. Something on the job's going to happen.
Snafu.
We promise you.
Situation normal.
It's not if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when.
Yep. I will. Yeah, all that's correct. I don't really have a whole lot to add to it other than the fact that, again, interview. I always, when I was on doing design build work, and clients always asked me about interviewing contractors. They of course always ask me for referrals, and I would make referrals to contractors I had relationships with. But I always told them, I said, everyone asks to talk to, they're asked the contractor to give them referrals. Let me talk to your last 3 clients. Well, guess what? They're going to give you the names of the clients that are happy with them. So I challenge you as a homeowner to ask them for 2 clients that went terrible. And make sure you tell the contractor you're not going to rely on those people's input to make your decision. But it does 2 or 3 things for you. One, it will help you determine whether or not the contractor is honest and confident in himself or herself to give you the name of somebody that he knows is going to say bad things about him. 2, if you actually do get a chance to talk to somebody who has nothing but bad things to say, it gives you an opportunity to ask how that went sideways. And you can learn a lot about a contractor. Was it communication? Was it a bad contract? Or was it that they showed up drunk and inebriated on the job site? There's a big difference between the two. One you can fix, the other you can't.
I'll tell you the other thing it's going to do, Steve, not to mean to step on you,
Yep.
but it's going to show you as to whether that particular contractor has a specific level of skill set when it comes to crisis management.
Correct. Yes, that was my third one.
When the crap hits the fan.
How do they deal with it?
And we just said minutes ago, it's going to hit the fan sooner or later. How do they deal with it? Were they calm and collective and provided solutions to get you out of the malaise that you're in? Or did it just end up just spiraling downward from the point that crap hit the fan?
Yeah. Well, we beat that one to death.
Yes.
So number 6, and the last one in this series of 5, I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to explain the intent of it, and then I'll let you, John, commentate on it. So number 6 is building permits are just another form of government overreach and serves no purpose. So what we're talking about here in terms of building permits, of course, is building code. So the intent of a permit, I'll just lay this out. The intent of the permit is to make sure that you, as the homeowner, are being protected and making sure that your project is being built per building code. Now, building codes are intended to do one thing, to protect the life safety of the occupants of the home. I'll say that again, to protect the life and safety of the occupants of the home. It's actually part of the oath architects take to protect the life safety of occupants, and contractors also, through their continuing education every year, are reminded that their intention is to protect the life safety. So building code is designed to protect the life safety. It's not designed to make sure that your doors are square or your windows don't leak or that something is installed incorrectly. Inspectors are not there to inspect the quality of the work. They're there to inspect that everything was put together in the way International Building Code dictates. The building code is adapted and modified about every 3 years. We're on a 3-year permit schedule or a codes cycle. So what's that? Cycle. So every 3 years, a bunch of engineers, architects, and business people get together and decide what parts of the code need to be modified and which ones are good. Sometimes they take things out. Most of the time they add things. But it protects the life safety. That includes fire protection, electrical protection, plumbing protection, structural protection, the basic needs of keeping Mother Nature out of your house, the building envelope. We refer to that in another episode. But the building code is designed to protect you. And the only way to make sure that the building code is being used is if you, as the homeowner, get a permit. If you don't get a permit, shame on you. Before I turn this over to John for his commentary, I will say that as an architect and a general contractor, one of the things that I actually made a lot of money with was people calling me and saying, I got caught. I started a project without a building permit. and they shut me down. And now I need a building permit. Well, guess what? If you want to go get a permit post haste, in other words, after you've built the structure, you have to do demolition to that structure so that the building inspectors can come in and inspect what they would have normally inspected without all the stuff in the way. For instance, the electrical inspector needs to make sure that your boxes and your switches are all installed correctly and grounded correctly, and that you're using the right wire, and the wires are terminated. Well, they can't see that with the drywall up and your switches all in nice little places. So you'll have to do demolition to pull it off, to see that, and call the inspections. If there's a structural issue, you may have to do demolition to make sure that they can see what was built. So that's a major pain in the ass. Going back to why do you hire an architect? An architect is going to require you to get a building permit. Architects cannot seal drawings that are not for projects that should have a permit that don't. So that's a level of care that's built in there. And finally, before I get off my soapbox here, when you go to sell that house in the future, let's say you put on a mother-in-law addition with a kitchen, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and a bedroom. A real estate agent will compare the floor plans that are in the system, because the tax collectors will document your house, and there's basic footprints of your floor plan in the system. And if they go to sell the house and realize that the floor plan in the system doesn't match what's actually built, they have to disclose that. That's part of the disclosure documents in your closing documents. And if there wasn't a building permit pulled for that work, you as the seller have to go get a permit. Otherwise, you're either going to take responsibility for it, or you're going to ask your homeowner or your buyer to take responsibility for it. That usually means money coming out of your pocket. So that's generally where when it happens, when I get called and they say, hey, we want to sell the house, but the garage addition we did 15 years ago, we hired a Chuck in the truck or Dan in a van, he came in, built it. It may or may not be on our property line. It may or may not be connected to the right utilities. There's a myriad of things that could have gone wrong with that. But if you had just simply pulled a permit and had it inspected, you could have avoided all that. Okay, I'm done, John. You can go from there.
The only thing that I'm going to add to that, because that was pretty thorough in itself, and you stole some of my thunder, is I want to talk about another short scenario here. Say you have a 20-year-old house, your deck has become decrepit, and you need to replace it. And when I say replacement, I'm not talking about just changing the deck boards. I'm talking about tearing down the entire thing down to the footers and starting from scratch. If you hire a deck contractor who does not pull a permit, or you do not pull a permit if you're allowed to in your jurisdiction, and you put that deck up, whether it meets code or not, there are a lot of jurisdictions that will tell you to tear that deck down. And if you're in a position where you're in the midst of selling your house, and all of a sudden it's decided through these disclosures that you didn't have a permit pulled when that new deck was installed, you're demolishing that deck and you're building a new one before that closing can actually occur. So you could be in, for $20 to $40 to $50, $60,000 just by virtue of you not wanting to spend $400 on a building permit.
Yep, and decks
that's how ridiculous it is.
And decks don't require drawings. It's usually just a paper permit. You go down to the.
It really is. You can usually, like for instance, in our particular county, a homeowner can go down there tomorrow morning to the planning division in our county and fill in some paperwork, and they walk out with a permit.
Yep, and inspections ensue.
It's extremely important, and in most cases, the cost that you're going to spend and the time that you're going to be spending and pulling them is minuscule compared to the actual problems that you could run into on the back end.
All of that to just say that building permits are not another form of government overreach, and they do serve a purpose. And rewatch this video several times. If you have any questions, comments in the comments below, go to our website, send us an email. John and I will be more than happy to talk to you offline if you have any questions or concerns about a project you have. We're going to take a quick break here and come back and talk about the final 5 of the top 15 myths. But if you're not going to join us for that next episode, please subscribe to our page, our channel, like our podcast. Again, share this information with family and friends on your socials. Hopefully we're providing a value to you here that you appreciate, and we're just trying to get out in front of as many people as possible in order to share our hard knocks, our school of hard knocks that John and I have so dutifully learned from. So until next time, have a good evening and peace.